The massive chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as the doors swung open. Tom Miller, the first human representative to ever set foot in these halls, walked in with the casual confidence that his species was known for. The council members, representing over 300 advanced civilizations, watched him with a mixture of curiosity and concern. High above, in the visitors' gallery, hundreds of alien diplomats whispered among themselves. They had all heard stories about humans, the newest species to join the galactic community. Stories about their remarkable ability to survive on a death world, their strange habit of keeping dangerous animals as pets, and their seemingly impossible resistance to toxins that would kill most species. Council leader Rex, a tall, blue-skinned being with 4 arms and crystalline eyes, stood up from his position at the center of the circular platform. Human Representative Miller, we welcome you to the Grand Chamber. However, we must address a rather disturbing incident that occurred this morning in the Embassy District. Tom smiled, already knowing what this was about. The incident had spread through the station's communication channels faster than a quantum transmission. You were seen approaching and making physical contact with a shadow hunter, Rex continued, his voice carrying a note of disbelief. A creature that has claimed the lives of 27 different species representatives in the past decade alone. The chamber erupted in murmurs. The shadow hunter was notorious throughout the galaxy, a massive, 6-legged predator with obsidian scales and neural-disrupting venom. It had evolved on one of the most dangerous planets known to the Council and was used by the station's security forces as a biological security system, keeping unauthorized visitors away from sensitive areas. Oh, you mean Max? Tom's casual response caused several council members to grip their seats in shock. He's actually quite friendly once you know how to approach him. You named it? A reptilian council member hissed from the left side of the chamber. Well, yes, Tom replied, pulling out his data pad. I noticed he was displaying signs of stress and loneliness. These creatures are pack hunters on their home world. The poor guy's been isolated here for years, used as nothing more than a scary guard dog. The council members watched in stunned silence as Tom projected a hologram showing his morning encounter. In the recording, he carefully approached the massive shadow hunter, reading its body language with remarkable precision. Instead of attacking, the creature had eventually lowered its defensive posture and allowed Tom to scratch behind its sensory ridges, a spot that apparently caused it immense pleasure, given the way its neural spines relaxed and its triple-pupilled eyes dilated. Impossible, whispered an avian council member, her feathers ruffling in agitation. The creature has killed every being that's come within 10 meters of it. Tom shook his head. No offense to the council, but you've been misusing these magnificent animals. They're highly intelligent and social. The aggressive behavior you've seen is a result of isolation and improper handling. On Earth, we have similar predators, lions, tigers, wolves, that we've learned to work with rather than just fear. A holographic display showed the shadow hunter, now named Max, following Tom through the embassy district like an oversized puppy, its previously threatening neural spines glowing with a peaceful blue light instead of their usual aggressive red. This is unprecedented, Rex stated, leaning forward with genuine interest. Human Miller, are you suggesting that your species has some special ability to communicate with predatory species? Not exactly, Tom replied, his eyes twinkling with amusement. We just understand something that seems to have been forgotten in the rush to develop faster-than-light travel and energy weapons. Every living being needs respect, understanding, and sometimes, a good scratch behind the ears, or in Max's case, the neural ridges. The chamber remained silent as the council members processed this information. The humans' approach to one of the galaxy's deadliest creatures wasn't just brave, it demonstrated a fundamental understanding of life that many advanced civilizations had somehow lost along their path to the stars. We would be very interested in learning more about human methods of animal handling, Rex finally said, his crystalline eyes shimmering with curiosity. Perhaps there are other aspects of galactic security that could benefit from your species' unique perspective. Tom nodded, already planning how to improve the living conditions for the station's biological security forces. As he left the chamber that day, followed by his new six-legged friend, he couldn't help but smile. Humanity's first major contribution to galactic society might not be advanced technology or military might, but something far more fundamental, the ability to make friends with the monsters that everyone else feared. 2 weeks after the shocking council meeting, Tom Miller stood in the newly established Human-Animal Relations Center on the space station. The massive facility, hastily converted from an unused storage bay, now housed several of the galaxy's most dangerous security creatures. The Council had been surprisingly quick to approve his proposal for reforming their biological security program. "Today, we're going to demonstrate proper handling techniques," Tom announced to his audience, a nervous group of alien security personnel from various species. Behind him, Max the Shadow Hunter lounged peacefully, its neural spines pulsing with a gentle blue glow. Among the observers was Officer Reed, a tall insectoid being whose metallic exoskeleton clicked softly as she moved closer. "But how can we be certain they won't attack? These creatures have killed hundreds." Tom smiled, reaching into a large container. "The key is understanding their basic needs. Take Max here, his species evolved as pack hunters. They're not naturally solitary. The aggression you've seen was largely due to stress and isolation." He pulled out what looked like a large rubber ball, causing several security officers to step back in alarm. "Is that a toy?" asked a reptilian officer, his scales shifting colors in confusion. "Exactly," Tom replied. "Predators need mental stimulation and exercise, just like any other intelligent being. Max, catch." He tossed the ball high into the air. The assembled aliens gasped as the massive shadow hunter leaped gracefully, catching the ball in its secondary mandibles before landing with surprising gentleness. The creature's neural spines flickered with patterns that Tom had learned to recognize as happiness. "Notice how his hunting instincts are being channeled into play," Tom explained, accepting the ball back from Max. "This reduces stress and builds trust. But more importantly, it maintains their natural abilities while creating positive associations with their handlers." A holographic display activated, showing footage from Earth. The aliens watched in amazement as humans worked with various predators, lions, wolves, and even great white sharks. "Our ancestors learned long ago that working with predators was often more beneficial than trying to eliminate them," Tom continued. "Some of Earth's earliest civilizations were protected by domesticated wolves, which we now know as dogs." Officer Reed raised one of her sensor appendages. "But surely there were casualties during this domestication process?" "Of course," Tom acknowledged. "Any work with dangerous animals carries risk. But we've learned to minimize those risks through understanding and respect. Watch this." He turned to Max and made a series of hand signals. The shadow hunter immediately moved into a defensive position near a doorway, its neural spines shifting to an alert yellow color. "We're not trying to change their nature," Tom explained. "We're working with it. Max is still an incredibly effective security asset, but now he's also a happy, well-adjusted being who won't attack unless there's a genuine threat." The demonstration continued as Tom introduced other creatures that had previously been used only as terrifying deterrents. There was a pair of void stalkers, creatures that could phase through solid matter, now contentedly playing a modified version of fetch. A quantum serpent, whose bite could theoretically erase someone from timeline itself, was learning to respond to simple commands. "The most important thing to remember," Tom said as he scratched Max's neural ridges, "is that fear often breeds fear. When we approach these creatures with respect and understanding, they usually respond in kind." As if to prove his point, Max gently nuzzled Tom's shoulder with one of his secondary mandibles, a gesture that would have caused mass panic just weeks ago. Several of the alien officers leaned forward with obvious interest. "We'll start with basic safety protocols," Tom continued, "then move on to reading body language and understanding species-specific needs. By the end of this program, you'll be able to work with these creatures as partners rather than just using them as weapons. Officer Reed stepped forward, her metallic exoskeleton reflecting the gentle blue glow from Max's spines. "I would like to volunteer for the first training session," she announced, causing a ripple of surprised clicks and whistles from her colleagues. Tom grinned. This was exactly the kind of breakthrough he'd hoped for. As he began explaining the proper approach technique to Officer Reed, he couldn't help but think about how far they'd come in just 2 weeks. The galaxy's deadliest creatures were becoming partners instead of just threats, and in the process, humanity was teaching the stars an important lesson about the power of understanding over fear. The emergency alarms blared through the space station's corridors, their haunting wail sending shivers down the spines of every being aboard. In the central security hub, Tom Miller stared at the holographic display with growing concern. A Rouge ship had crashed through the station's outer docking ring, and its crew, a notorious group of space pirates, was now loose in the station. "All security forces to level 7. The station's AI announced. "Multiple hostile intruders detected. Warning, they are carrying neural scramblers." Tom's heart sank. Neural scramblers were specifically designed to disrupt the brain patterns of security creatures. The pirates had clearly planned this attack well. "Human Miller." Officer Reed's voice crackled through the comm system. "The pirates are heading toward the diplomatic quarter. Our energy barriers are failing, and they've already disabled 2 security teams." Tom quickly pulled up the station schematics. The diplomatic quarter housed representatives from hundreds of worlds, many of whom were currently attending a peace conference. If the pirates reached them, what about our security creatures? Tom asked, already moving toward the Human-Animal Relations Center. "The neural scramblers are causing them intense pain," Reed replied, her usually steady voice shaking. "Max and the others are completely incapacitated. We've had to lock down their quarters to prevent them from hurting themselves." Tom reached the center and found Max writhing in obvious distress, his neural spines flashing an angry red. The other creatures were in similar states, their enhanced senses overwhelmed by the scrambler's effects. But as Tom watched Max, he noticed something interesting. The creature wasn't just acting in pain, it was trying to communicate. "Reed," Tom said suddenly, "remember what we learned about Shadowhunter pack hunting behavior? They don't just rely on their neural sensors. They have a backup hunting mode for when their primary senses are overwhelmed." "That's fascinating, Human Miller, but how does that help us?" "The scramblers. The scramblers are targeting their primary hunting senses, yes. But Shadowhunters evolved on a world with constant electromagnetic storms. They can switch to using pure instinct and physical senses when needed." Tom approached Max's enclosure, his hand hovering over the release controls. "We just need to help them make that switch." "You can't be serious." Reed's voice rose in pitch. "In their current state, they could attack anyone. Not if we give them something else to focus on." Tom opened a storage unit and pulled out the toys they'd been using in training, specifically, the ones infused with different scents. Their backup hunting mode relies heavily on smell. If we can get them to lock onto specific scents. Without waiting for further objections, Tom released Max's enclosure. The massive creature stumbled out, its movements jerky and uncoordinated. Tom held up one of Max's favorite toys, one that they'd used repeatedly in training. "Focus, buddy," Tom said softly, holding the toy steady. "Remember your training. Push through the pain." For a terrifying moment, Max's neural spines blazed bright red, and his triple-pupilled eyes seemed unfocused. Then, gradually, the creature's secondary sensory organs, small pits along its jaw that Tom had previously noted but never seen in use, began to twitch. Max's head turned toward the toy, then to Tom, then back to the toy. "That's it," Tom encouraged. "You don't need your neural sensors. You're more than just your primary hunting mode. Slowly, Max's movements became more controlled. The creature was clearly still in pain, but it was adapting, falling back on more primitive but equally effective hunting methods. "Reed," Tom said into his comm, "I'm going to release the other creatures too. Have your teams ready with their training scent markers. We're going to give these pirates a lesson in why you shouldn't mess with Earth's animal handling techniques." "This is either brilliant or suicidal," Reed replied, but Tom could hear her giving orders to her teams. As Tom prepared to release the other creatures, he glanced at Max, who was now standing steadily despite the neural scrambler's effects. The creature's eyes met his, showing the same intelligence that had first caught Tom's attention weeks ago. But now there was something else there too: trust, built through weeks of patient training, and a predator's eagerness for the hunt. "Let's show the galaxy what happens when you try to use technology to overcome millions of years of evolution," Tom said, reaching for the master release controls. "And why humanity's approach to working with predators might just save everyone today." The space station's diplomatic quarter had descended into chaos. 12 pirates, armed with advanced weapons and neural scramblers, moved confidently through the corridors. Their leader, a scarred humanoid named Drake, smiled as his team approached the main conference chamber. The neural scramblers had worked perfectly, disabling the station's notorious biological security forces. What they didn't expect was the sound of heavy footfalls coming from multiple directions. "Boss," one of the pirates called out nervously, "I thought you said the security creatures would be incapacitated." Before Drake could respond, a massive shape emerged from the shadows. It was Max, moving with deadly grace despite the neural scrambler's effects. Behind the shadow hunter, Tom Miller walked calmly, holding what looked like a simple rubber ball. "Fun fact about Earth's history," Tom announced, his voice echoing through the corridor. "When our ancestors first domesticated wolves, they didn't do it by overwhelming them with technology. They did it by understanding them." He squeezed the ball, releasing a specific scent that triggered Max's training responses. "And understanding means knowing all their abilities, even the backup ones." Drake raised his neural scrambler with a sneer. "Your pet monster can barely stand. Look at its neural spines, they're completely disrupted." "You're right," Tom agreed. "Max's neural sensing is totally scrambled. Good thing that's not all he has." He turned to Max, "Show them what a shadow hunter can really do, buddy." Max launched forward with explosive speed, now moving purely on instinct and physical senses. The pirates' neural scramblers, designed to target the creature's primary hunting mode, were useless against this more primitive but equally lethal approach. Throughout the station, similar scenes played out as other security creatures, guided by Officer Reed's teams using their training sense, engaged the scattered pirates. The Void Stalkers, typically reliant on their phase-sensing abilities, fell back on pure physical hunting instincts, appearing and disappearing through walls with deadly precision. The Quantum Serpent, though unable to use its timeline-erasing bite, proved just as dangerous with its conventional venomous fangs. "Fall back!" Drake shouted, firing his energy weapon at Max. The Shadow Hunter dodged with fluid grace, its secondary sensory pits tracking every movement. The pirates retreated, only to find their path blocked by Officer Reed and her team, each officer holding training markers that guided their security creature partners. "You know what amazes me?" Tom said, walking forward as Max herded the pirates into a tight group. "You thought that by disrupting their neural sensors, you'd render them harmless. But you forgot something crucial: these creatures survived and evolved on the deadliest worlds in the galaxy. Their neural abilities are just one tool in their arsenal." Drake fired his scrambler at maximum power. Max flinched but didn't back down. Instead, the creature's hunting instincts, honed through weeks of positive training exercises, kept it focused on its task. One by one, the pirates dropped their weapons, realizing they were completely surrounded by creatures operating on pure predatory instincts that had been carefully channeled through human training methods. "This is impossible," Drake muttered as Officer Reed's team moved in to make arrests. The scramblers should have worked. That's the problem with relying too much on technology, Tom said, approaching Max and scratching his neural ridges despite their erratic flashing. You forget that nature has spent billions of years developing backup systems. These creatures don't just have one way of hunting, they have layers of abilities built into their very DNA. As the pirates were led away, Council Leader Rex appeared on a nearby holoscreen, his crystalline eyes shimmering with excitement. Human Miller, your methods have just prevented a potential diplomatic disaster. More importantly, you've demonstrated something remarkable about your species' approach to working with dangerous creatures. Tom smiled, watching as Max's neural spines gradually began to stabilize, the effect of the scramblers wearing off. We just remember something that too many advanced civilizations forget, sir: respect and understanding will always be more powerful than trying to control through force or technology. Around the station, other security teams reported similar successes. The pirates' plan, which had seemed foolproof when targeting the creature's neural abilities, had fallen apart when faced with the combination of natural instincts and human training methods. I believe, Rex announced, that the Council will be very interested in expanding your training program. Perhaps it's time we learned more about humanity's unique perspective on working with the galaxy's most dangerous beings. 1 month after the pirate incident, the Human-Animal Relations Center had tripled in size. Tom stood at the observation window, watching with pride as Officer Reed led a training session with representatives from 20 different worlds. Below, Max demonstrated proper pack coordination with 2 younger shadow hunters recently brought in from their home world. Remarkable, said a soft voice behind him. Tom turned to find Council Leader Rex approaching, his crystalline eyes reflecting the scene below. In just a few months, you've completely transformed our approach to biological security. The transformation was already possible, Tom replied, gesturing to where a group of alien handlers were learning to read their creature's body language. These beings were always capable of more than just being weapons or deterrents. They just needed someone to give them a chance. The observation room's displays showed similar training sessions happening across multiple space stations and planetary facilities. After the failed pirate attack had made headlines across the galaxy, numerous worlds had requested human trainers and expertise. The Council has received an interesting proposal, Rex said, moving closer to the window. The Shadowhunter home world's government wants to establish a permanent human presence in their ranger forces. It seems they've realized that their planet's most dangerous predators might be better understood through human eyes. Tom smiled as he watched Max gently guiding the younger Shadowhunters through a complex training exercise. The creature's neural spines pulsed with synchronized patterns, showing the pack bonds that had been missing in their previous isolated deployments. Did you know, Tom said, that on Earth, some of our most effective wildlife preserves are run by former poachers? People who once hunted animals illegally became their greatest protectors once they understood them better. He turned to Rex. Sometimes, the best way to protect something is to help others see its true value. Below, Officer Reed's carapace glowed with pride as she successfully led her group through a complex interaction with a void stalker. The creature, once feared throughout the sector, now moved with careful precision through a series of commands, demonstrating both its natural abilities and its willingness to work with other species. We've received another interesting development, Rex continued. The pirates who attacked the station have completed their initial rehabilitation assessment. Several have requested to enter your training program. Tom raised an eyebrow. The same pirates who tried to scramble our security creatures? Indeed. It seems their experience changed their perspective. As one of them put it, if humans can work with shadow hunters, maybe we can learn to work with them too. Rex's crystalline eyes sparkled with amusement. The Council is considering a pilot program for rehabilitating certain offenders through animal handling training. The idea made sense to Tom. Working with dangerous creatures required patience, respect, and the ability to think beyond one's own immediate desires, all valuable traits for rehabilitation. A commotion from below drew their attention. One of the new shadow hunters had become agitated, its neural spines flashing warning colors. Before anyone could react, Max moved in, positioning himself between the younger creature and the trainees. Instead of showing aggression, Max's neural patterns displayed a calming sequence that Tom recognized from his studies of their pack behavior. "Look at that," Tom said proudly. "Max isn't just following training now, he's teaching others. That's something we've seen in almost every Earth species we've worked with. Once they understand their role in a cooperative relationship, they often become better teachers than we could ever be." Rex nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps that is what makes your species' approach so effective. You don't just train these creatures, you learn from them and allow them to learn from each other." The younger Shadowhunter's spines gradually shifted to match Max's calming pattern. The trainees watched in amazement as what could have been a dangerous situation was resolved through understanding and communication rather than force. "The galaxy is changing," Rex continued. "For millennia, we've approached dangerous species with fear and technology. Your methods have shown us a different path." He turned to Tom. "The Council will be voting next week on establishing a Galactic Wildlife Understanding and Training Initiative, with Earth's methods as its foundation." Tom watched as Max successfully calmed the younger Shadow Hunter, teaching it the same lessons of trust and cooperation that he had learned weeks ago. "That's the thing about understanding," he said. "Once it starts, it tends to spread. And sometimes, the creatures we once feared the most become our greatest teachers about ourselves." 1 year after Tom Miller first approached a lonely shadow hunter in the Embassy District, the Galactic Council chamber was packed for a historic occasion. Representatives from over 500 worlds attended, many accompanied by creatures that would have caused panic just months ago. Tom stood at the central platform, Max by his side. The shadow hunter's neural spines glowed with a calm blue light, a stark contrast to the aggressive red they had shown a year earlier. Behind them, a massive holographic display showed footage from across the galaxy, human trainers working with various species, reformed pirates learning to care for creatures they once feared, and peaceful cooperation between beings once thought impossible to tame. "Members of the Council," Tom began, his voice carrying through the chamber, "1 year ago, I stood here to explain why I had approached what you called the deadliest predator. Today, I stand here with not just a security asset, but a partner and friend." Max's neural spines pulsed in agreement, causing murmurs of appreciation throughout the chamber. Several other shadow hunters in the room responded with similar patterns, demonstrating the pack connections that now linked security forces across multiple stations. "The Galactic Wildlife Understanding and Training Initiative has exceeded all expectations," Council Leader Rex announced, his crystalline eyes bright with enthusiasm. "Over 3,000 dangerous species have been successfully integrated into cooperative security programs. Rehabilitation rates among criminal offenders in the animal handling program have reached 90%. But perhaps most remarkably, we've seen the emergence of something we never expected, natural cooperation between species once thought to be eternal enemies." The holographic display showed footage from various stations and planets, void stalkers working alongside quantum serpents, reformed pirates patrolling with their former targets, and even young aliens fearlessly learning to communicate with creatures their parents had dreaded. "But the most significant change," Tom continued, "hasn't been in the creatures or the training programs. It's been in how we view the galaxy itself." He gestured to Officer Reed, who now commanded the station's integrated security force of both biological and technological assets. Her carapace gleamed with newly awarded command insignia. "When humans first joined the galactic community," Tom said, "many wondered what we could contribute. We didn't have the most advanced technology. We weren't the strongest or fastest species. But we brought something that turned out to be just as valuable, the understanding that fear often prevents us from seeing the true potential in others." As if to demonstrate this point, Max gently nuzzled one of his secondary mandibles against Tom's shoulder, a gesture that now brought smiles instead of terror to the watching audience. In the visitors' gallery, several former pirates sat with their own animal partners, their lives transformed by the rehabilitation program. Today, the Council will vote on 2 proposals, Rex announced. First, the establishment of Earth as the primary training center for the Galactic Wildlife Understanding Initiative. Second, the creation of a new position on the Council, Interspecies Relations Coordinator. Tom felt Max's subtle shift in posture before he heard the chamber doors open. Through them walked Drake, the former pirate leader, now one of the program's most successful rehabilitation cases. At his side padded a young shadow hunter, its neural spines glowing with healthy blue patterns. A year ago, Drake addressed the chamber. I thought the height of power was having weapons that could disable these magnificent creatures. Now I understand that true power comes from earning their trust and respect. His shadow hunter partner chirped in agreement, displaying the same pack bonding patterns as Max. The Council's vote was unanimous. As celebrations broke out across the chamber, Tom knelt beside Max, scratching the neural ridges that had once struck fear into the hearts of thousands. "You know, buddy," he said quietly, "back on Earth, there's an old saying, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to reach out, to show that what we fear might actually be what we need the most." Max's neural spines pulsed with patterns that Tom now recognized as happiness, mirrored by dozens of other creatures throughout the chamber. The deadliest predator in the galaxy had become a symbol of hope, understanding, and the unique human ability to find friendship in the most unexpected places. As Tom looked out over the chamber, he saw not just the success of his training program, but the beginning of a new era in galactic society. Humanity's greatest contribution hadn't been technology or warfare, but something far more powerful, the ability to see past fear and find the potential for connection with every living being, no matter how dangerous they might seem.